So this is a big question. In this video, let's explore whether you should look at an HMO or a buy-to-let property when starting out in your property investing career. Both options have pros and both options have cons in them, and it really is a mixture of time, money, experience, willingness, and risk that can really determine this answer. The reality is, for everybody watching this video, there is no right or wrong answer. It's about understanding each option and forming the right property plan that suits you and your goals, and also understanding the basics so that you don't make any nasty mistakes. So let's jump in and explore the world of HMOs versus buy-to-let property investing, and hopefully from this you'll be able to make somewhat of an informed decision of what's best for you. Right, so let's break this video up into 4 sections. Firstly, we'll explore all about HMOs, all about buy-to-let, face the two off together, and then I'll give you my own thoughts, my own plan of what I'm doing at the end of the video. So let's start with HMOs. If you're not familiar with what an HMO is, it's known as a house of multiple occupancy. And at some point in your life, you may have actually lived in one. This is typically where you live with multiple other people, whether friends or strangers, and you pay for the house by the room. However, this can be either on a separate contract or on a joint contract. HMOs are a great way to generate strong cash flow from a house, mainly because if you had a 4-bedroom house in a city centre that would say bring in £750 a month in rent, in a northern town or city, as an HMO, each room could potentially let out for around £400 a month in total, bringing the gross rental income of the property to about £1,600, which is almost double what you could achieve as a single buy-to-let. The difference is with an HMO, typically you as the landlord tend to look after the bills and council tax, so the tenants live all-inclusive. It's really flexible, meaning if you let a property out to young professionals, for those looking for somewhere to stay for say 6 to 12 months without any long hard commitments, then HMOs are perfect for them. Likewise for students, it allows them to stay for 9 to 10 months of the year and live in a house with their friends without having to worry too much about the bills and being adults. Now, this does mean that because your costs are higher in an HMO, it means that naturally you'll spend more on it every single month. But the trade-off is higher rental income and the higher costs. The idea being that you should still be able to net around £1,000 a month after all of your costs, maintenance and voids, etc. on a 4-bed house, depending on the area and the rental income and the number of bedrooms. A lot of property investors focus on HMOs as a strategy and a way to get out of their 9-to-5 job, because it only takes a few houses to cover the average UK salary, meaning it's an accelerated way out of full-time work and instead into full-time business if that's what you want. An HMO can be sort of created anywhere, however, you have to be mindful of Article 4 areas, and this is where the local council put a boundary around usually city centres, meaning that you can't change the use class of the property from C3, which is a normal dwelling, to C4, which is an HMO, without having to go through planning permission. Now, if it's not in an Article 4 area, you don't need planning, and instead it can be done under permitted development. So Article 4 essentially removes those permitted development rights. A lot of people do tend to steer clear of Article 4 areas, but it doesn't mean that it's impossible to get planning. You just have to understand why an area was given Article 4 in the first place, as the particular area that you're looking at to build an HMO might be in an area that isn't of massive concern to the council, although it falls within the Article 4 boundary. To sum up, HMOs, they're an amazing cash flow strategy, and you can get a nice minimo with 4 bedrooms, or you can work your way up to a mammoth 10 bedrooms, sui generis style pub conversion, meaning you can really enter in a part of the market that's most in line with your budget and risk appetite. But with all of that sounding great, HMOs are hard work. You're looking after more tenants, which means more problems, and that means that more problems can definitely crop up. And I've definitely noticed that good HMO managing agents are hard to find because you can't just go into a normal estate agent, as it's likely that they won't be up to speed with all the certificates and licensing requirements, meaning they could put you and your HMO at risk for essentially being illegal if you're not on top of it. And then the HMO managing agents that are out there, from what I hear on Instagram, are quite few and far between in terms of quality, and you just need to make sure that you can trust and rely on your managing agent. Otherwise, there's a risk that your HMO could be filled with the wrong kind of people and you end up with a trash property or huge rental voids. So knowing who's filling the rooms is absolutely crucial. To summarise, what are the pros and cons of HMOs? So they're a great cash flow strategy compared to buy-to-let. It will allow you to replace your job quicker if that's what you're looking to do. You can choose between students or young professionals, but don't mix the two. And you can start small with 4 bedrooms or go big with 10 plus bedrooms. Some areas outside of Article 4, if less than a certain amount of bedrooms, don't need planning whatsoever. And the cons are that it's high risk. There's lots of regulations down top of, both on an inspection and safety certificate perspective, as well as building regulations like fire doors and fire blankets and integrated fire alarm systems if you have more than 3 floors. There's a higher turnover of tenants if they're young professionals, meaning that there's more time and it's going to be more time consuming to manage. You'll have higher wear and tear due to the number of people in the houses. You'll need planning in the best areas like popular city centres. And to get the best mortgage rates, you need 12 plus months of landlord experience, which usually you'd get from having the buy-to-let in the first place, so interest rates may be a lot higher for first-timers. Buy-to-let, right, so let's explore good old vanilla buy-to-lets. Now, I assume if you're already watching this, you're already aware of what a buy-to-let is, but for a quick 10-second summary, it's where you buy a house and rent the house out to a tenant on an assured short-hold tenancy for a given period of time. Most landlords in the UK have one buy-to-let, and a survey done back in 2015 by HomeLet, which is a little bit old now, showed that 55% of landlords had one property, usually made up of the casual investor looking to boost their pension or accidental landlords through inheritance or other means. 36% have 2 or 3 properties, and very few landlords in the UK actually have more than 3 properties. So most people are what I'd call the casual investor who, likely with 3 properties, aren't going to be full-time. It's either a mixture of those with full-time work or retired people who just want a bit more cash to help tie over their pension and keep them going in later life. Now, buy-to-lets really are the best way to get started in property investing. It's exactly what I'm doing, and it can teach you about so much in the world of property. For me, I'm in the process of buying a property that needs a small refurb and is below the market value for the area. So with the 10k budget ready for the refurb, it should make about £8,500 profit on day one. And then I'm going to rent it out for a minimum of 2 years to bump up the numbers and give the house a bit of time to benefit from both capital appreciation and the rental income before I then look at refinancing it or selling it to pull more of that money out of the property that's been tied up. Typically with a buy-to-let, the average rent in the UK for a decent 3-bedroom house is around £600. Mortgage costs are around £200, maintenance, voids and management can add up to another £180, so your monthly profit can be anywhere from £220 a month to £300 a month, depending on whether you self-manage or not, and how much you put away for maintenance and voids. Typically, these are about 5%, so that will help you work out the cash flow of a buy-to-let property. Obviously, if you have a really nice property kept to a good standard in a great area, then it's rare that you'll have big voids. So that 5% is more of a safety net every single month. But for the majority, buy-to-lets are simple. You can buy a house, get your electrical, gas and EPC certificates, and the house is pretty much ready to rent out. Typically, tenants tend to stay for a long time, especially if you have a family who then put their kids in school. You could really have tenants stay for a long period of time if the house is nice enough. So providing the house is a good quality, you might not even need to think about maintenance too much if the family or tenants look after the house. Buy-to-lets are seen as pretty hands-off if you do a good job, and there are tons of scummy landlords out there who have poor quality houses, so don't let them tarnish the industry with the same brush. There are tons of people out there who provide beautiful, high-quality homes that anybody would be proud to live in. On the downsides of buy-to-let, obviously it's going to take a lot of buy-to-lets to replace your job if that's what your aim is, with a net cash flow of around £250 to £300 a month. It would take 10 properties to replace the £3,000 a month salary, compared to 3 HMOs, which would net around £1,000 a month, meaning you'd need to invest less cash into the properties to get to that point. Buy-to-lets are typically seen as the safer and easier option, and there's no shortage of managing agents around, which means that if you do get a lazy agent, it's incredibly easy to sack them and find someone better if you're looking to hand your management over. In the cons of HMOs, I mentioned that lenders typically look for landlord experience for a minimum of 12 months to unlock the better rates. And this is likewise if you do a refurb on the property. This will begin to unlock more complex lending for bigger developments and refurbishments if you're looking to work your way up the ladder. For me, in my first project, I'll be making a 60% return on cost over 2 years. So I'm putting 41k in, and after 2 years, if I sold the property, it would likely make about £26,000 profit back if you factor in capital growth and the rental profit, which isn't too bad. But I'll be able to show lenders that I can manage a refurb, albeit small, but this helps lower my risk profile to lenders to A, unlock better things like development finance, and B, unlock better rates. Now, it's not always as simple as that, and any mortgage broker will tell you that there are tons of factors to consider, which is true, but you get the idea about the benefit of starting simple on a small buy-to-let that will really help you out further down the line. So the pros of buy-to-let: it's easy to get started and it requires no previous experience to get a buy-to-let mortgage. It allows you to do a small refurb project to gain experience and get started in the world of property. Plenty of managing agents around, and if you don't want to self-manage, there's tons of information online to help you go through setting up your first buy-to-let. It's bread and butter for mortgage brokers, and it's the simplest form of lending, and it's also quite hands-off once you rented out the property, providing that it's in a good shape. And lastly, for the pros, I think it's a really good way that will teach you all of the basics, and you'll learn so much from doing it on what is quite a low-risk strategy. So now let's explore the cons of buy-to-let. Well, the cash flow is less per month compared to an HMO, which means it would take many properties to replace your full-time income, meaning you'd need to have a lot of cash to build them up to the same point. Usually, you need to own your own home. It's not impossible, but it will unlock better rates if you're a homeowner already before trying to then get a buy-to-let property. Usually, you need a minimum income of 25k to get a good mortgage. Again, it's not impossible, but it will hugely benefit you if you do have an active income above 25k. So let's explore HMOs versus buy-to-let. So we've explored the pros and cons of HMOs and buy-to-lets, but the big question is, really, what is best? Well, fortunately or unfortunately, there isn't really a winner, and there isn't meant to be a winner. It really is up to you and what your strategy plan is. If you're looking to dip your toes into property, and if you do your basic homework on buy-to-lets and surround yourself with a good mortgage broker, accountant and solicitor, then you can't really go wrong. It'll teach you so much about yourself, about property, and managing tenants, as well as setting up a company and managing what is an investment business. You'll learn about regulations and you'll go through the highs and lows. With an HMO, it'll fast track you to financial freedom in the sense that you can quit your job sooner and go into full-time property if that's what you really want, because it requires less properties to gain the income back into your bank every single month. And an HMO is harder if you have no previous landlord experience. So naturally, it feels like the progression should be to get a buy-to-let, learn the ropes, and then move on to an HMO, as you'll be way more prepared by doing it that way. Some people might not really want to deal with tenants, so an HMO might be the idea of a nightmare. Tenants fighting and arguing, and things more likely to go wrong, versus having a nice, quiet family and a buy-to-let, so it really is down to personal preference. My thoughts, if you're really looking for some steer and guidance on what you should do if you're looking to get started in property investing, my recommendation is to get a buy-to-let first, and I'd think that most people would say the same thing. You'll learn so much from doing that, and that's what I'm going through at the moment. If you can find a property that's a little bit below market value and needs a small refurb, then definitely consider that as the ultimate option, because you'll get refurbishment experience, managing a project, trades, and go through the whole process of buying your first investment property. And because you can grow your money, gain experience, and then step into a HMO project in phase 2 with more experience, more money, and better lending options, which will make your profit margins better on the HMO property. It's definitely not impossible to jump straight into HMOs, but if you look at most of the big investors across the property Instagram community, most of them started with a buy-to-let or flip first. And that's exactly what I'm doing, and that's what I'd recommend, purely because I'm doing it and it feels like it makes the most logical sense. I hope you found that useful. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out my other one on the top here, which is my £60,000 buy-to-let property investing plan, or you can check out the one on the bottom, which is my day in the life of a property investor. So feel free to choose one of these, and I will see you in the next video.